It's been said that a writer is influenced not only by what they read and study, but those with whom they come into contact, and of course, their environment. Peter John Philander was born in Caledon, November 25, 1921, in the Overberg, as the second eldest son of John and Susanna Philander. He grew up in his hometown and attended the Dutch Reformed Mission Church School there. He had a modest upbringing, but things were far from simple. 3 of his siblings died at a young age, and their home had no running water nor electricity. He gravitated towards scholarly things, matriculating and becoming a principal. He was also seen as a leader and would hang out with other writers and progressive thinkers. He met Alice Harker and they got married. They had 3 gifted sons, George, Dennis, and Peter. A 4th daughter, Elsa, died in his arms on the way to the hospital at just 2 years old. Some of his early works dealt with these themes of loss and death. For a fresh start after Elsa's death, they felt that a new beginning was in order, and he was appointed as headmaster of a new school in Malmesbury in 1951. The move to Cape Town occurred in 1958. They built a house there in Rondebosch, a part of the city where coloreds and white families lived together as neighbors. During the summers of their childhood, the family would travel extensively in southern Africa, ranging from the Cape, around South Africa and Namibia, as far as Salisbury, Harare, in what would become Zimbabwe, and Beria in Mozambique. The political situation in South Africa was always tense, but worsening.
By 1969, my parents had what to many people was an enviable position. Dad was the principal of a high school. It was as high a position as he could get in the education system. Mother was teaching at Zonnebloem. He had the tortilla program where he could express his thoughts. He was at the peak of his abilities. But he also had a sense that it was a house of cards that could collapse at any moment. One of his teachers was picked up by the security police and was held incommunicado with no warning to the family, no warning to anybody. But he took it as a long-term warning to all teachers who were leaders of the community and who were prominent, that any of them be picked up at any moment and put away. The second one is that his poetry, which he had always felt was published on an even playing field, he published, and I think it was Vierklip, at a year when there was a first prize award, a second prize award. Well, Dad's book of poetry won the prize, but they announced that this year there is nothing that is worthy of the first prize. So we're giving the second prize to this poet. And he felt that was simply because he was not classified white. The next factor that led to them leaving was that they received a letter that house was in a white neighborhood. If they were to sell it, it had to be sold to a white family or to a white buyer, and that they needed to anticipate moving at some point in the future.
And wanting to start fresh and have a new challenge. And he somehow sensed that. Secondly, he was always concerned about his heart and his blood pressure, unmanaged blood pressure. And so he wanted a less of a pressure situation and continue to express himself. And I think he was prepared to venture and try it out. But right from the outset, he cast himself as really an ambassador, and he invited himself back to South Africa. The second trip was already in 1974, since my mother had some cardiac ailments, so she came to recuperate when I was at USC in Los Angeles. But he went forward with the trip, and by then it expanded to 12, 14 students and 2 teachers and 1 parent. And so really that's, I think, what guided and motivated them. But he loved to travel. Even when he was here, he was endorsed that, and every summer he again went on excursions.
Peter became the headmaster at a Quaker school in Long Island. He and Alice loved to take trips, either to Europe, Holland, Greece, and long road trips visiting his sons throughout the country. He loved to write, whether it was short stories, rich poetry, prose, or letters to friends. He continued writing, his work becoming more overtly political. The epic poem Zimbabwe, published in 1968, wove a tale of his opposition to apartheid, as did the prose of De Bruin Kokon. In 1963, he was awarded the Medal of Honor for Afrikaans by the South African Academy for Science and the Arts in recognition of his contribution to Afrikaans literature.
It's more than 15 years since Dad passed away, and I find myself now turning to his poetry for some kind of a problem that I face, not only I face, that I claim the whole world faces. I'm a scientist, and I'm at the end of my career. I would claim that science has accomplished enormous things. We almost call it miracles. In spite of this enormous advances in science, we've lost the confidence of the public. The public simply has no confidence in scientists. People don't get vaccinated, they don't believe in global warming and so forth. I will argue that a solution, maybe not a solution, but an antidote, can be found in poetry, in particular Dad's poetry. You cannot tell poor people the future will be worse, yet give them hope.
Peter wrote 12 books, became somewhat of a celebrity with his radio show and easy charm. He loved being a connector of people, a bridge between worlds. Alice grew ill on a trip to China, and after returning to the United States, sadly passed away in the summer of 1988. He returned to Friends Academy, but his visits to South Africa became fewer, his long walks shorter. His sons had their own families, and he would become misty-eyed hearing his grandchildren play their instruments. He died on February 7, 2006, from a heart valve condition that he had been suffering from since his youth. His family continues to flourish. They speak of him often and fondly.